Hello, this is Yehna.
And this is Jessie.
We are excited to be back with another episode of the myriad of questions we wrestled through. We wanted to invite you and elaborate more on the question of why is taking up space so hard? So welcome and join us
At
at the
the
table.
table.
Woohoo.
We tried a little new intro there, and we're trying to figure out, how to spice things up. So thank you for hearing something new. Today, we are going to, again, like Yana said, talk about why taking up space is so hard for Yana and I, and especially as Enneagram nines and twos. We're going to also incorporate like how being Asian and being the oldest has also affected that. And then kind of give an example of why that's so hard. What do we do in our unhealth? And some action steps. So, this is basically a self reflective episode.
Yes.
Let's get started. Yana, can you talk about like the rundown of why is taking up space so hard for nines and twos?
Yes, it kind of goes back to just our core motivations, just our individual core motivations. For example, as a nine, wanting this desire to have peace in our life. And so, because of that, we don't think what we think is important and how we feel is important, and we suppress our desire in general. It doesn't, from talking about what we want to eat for lunch to just a huge argument. So, and as for a two, this core motivation to be loved and needed, because of that, it's just they almost are make themselves indispensable and sacrifice so much when they are put in a position where they need to be the ones loved on, and that is unnatural, and it feels like it hinders us from possibly being accepted or loved on, or our peace will be hindered in doing these things. So, of course, we're going to elaborate more on that, but those are kind of just the core motivations of why we may not, or we will avoid being taking up space. Yeah.
Right. And for other people, like taking up space isn't something that they would even think about, maybe. Like,
Mm-hmm.
but I think for nines and twos, we definitely are very much aware of our surroundings,
Mm-hmm.
who is in our environment, and how much, therefore, like we adjust how much we're able to or we want to take up space. And so, as you can tell, with how Yana explained kind of the differences between the nines and twos. I mean, to kind of give an umbrella of it, like we believe that we aren't important, we don't value ourselves as much, we believe that we're a burden. But within that, the core motivators are very different. And that's something that Yana and I, even in our friendship, we've realized like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, generally we both don't like taking up space, but the reasons why, what's driving us is very different.
Very different, and it looks different
Um,
sometimes, and then in that way sometimes it creates misunderstanding. So we've worked through what that would look like and what goes in our head and why we do those things. Anyway, very interesting stuff.
I know when we talk about it out loud, we're like, huh, I don't feel that way. But
Yeah.
I get why you're not trying to take up space. You know what I mean?
Yes.
For sure. And it
Okay.
kind of, I feel like it also ties into being Asian and
Mm-hmm.
also being the oldest as well.
Right.
I mean, Asian culture generally has this collectivist mindset,
Mm-hmm.
don't cause a scene, make sure you're blending in with everyone else, make sure that you make yourself less for the greater good.
Right.
And that's definitely instilled in me
Mm-hmm.
when I am in a social setting or in a group of people. And then that kind of trickles down into my individual relationships. What about being the oldest? How has that kind of affected? Because I know you said being the oldest has really
Mm-hmm.
affected you feeling like you can't take up space. Well, how was that for you?
Yeah, I think as an oldest, and also just being not just the oldest in my family, but the oldest within my community, it was very
Mm,
much the need to sacrifice my needs and my desires so that people could go ahead of me. Not like, and whether it was, okay, stand in line last to get your meals, and
mm,
or, be the first to like clean up, or from that to just bigger things like, okay, let's not, like, don't mention those things because it might change the way they think, or it all, just all of those things was very much a big responsibility on my shoulder because they knew that as the oldest, it will impact the people around me more than anyone else, or at least that's what I believed. And so in that sense, in the positive side, it helped me learn about being generous and putting other people's first and caring for others. But on the flip side of things, as a little kid, it put in my head the narrative that my needs don't matter at all, period. Just don't mention it. And also kind of going on to the Asian culture, I just like thought about it. It's very much like respect the elders and put people, the elders first, or guests first. And I think that's such a valuable thing. And I'm actually very proud of that. But also it's just the other side is, oh, okay, we like tiptoe around so many things outside of that we neglect just trying at all to share what we think and what our heart's desires are. So,
and like the goal is to eventually, take the good out of both, right? Of yes, we still want to, we're proud of like the way that we show respect and care for others, but at the same time, if that's at the cost of neglecting ourselves, then that's where it becomes a problem, right? So we are now like in the rebuilding process of, okay, what does it look like to value ourselves and live out the truth of what God says, who God says we are,
Right.
So again, it's the conclusion of like our needs don't matter. But what does, Yana, can you give us an example of what, and you kind of did, but what does it look like mentally when you are taking up space? Like what goes through your brain when you're thinking about that?
Very stereotypical 9, if you guys already know the Enneagram, but for those who don't know, it's just, in my mind, truly, these things do go on in my head, is that stating my opinion, like, ooh, don't do it. It's just don't do it. Rule number 1, why would you put yourself in that position? Of course, disclaimer, sometimes I truly don't care. So I don't care if it goes with the flow. But a lot of times I do have this like inkling of wanting to do something or want to share something or blurt out something. And I always have to I tell myself I need to reel myself in because I might be too much. I might cause a ripple in this calm water, and I hate that. I'm already getting anxious talking about it. And which leads into the stepping into conflict. I will not do it. I will not do it. I will be that kid that would just like laugh nervously and walk the other direction. I physically take myself out of that position. It doesn't matter what intensity of the conflict is, I will not be there. Don't ask me. Even if it's a fake fight, I will not be there. Don't ask me to help you.
Real.
Just kidding. But for real. Stating an opinion or causing a ripple effect, just mentioning what I want to eat. Don't ask me what I want to do. Don't do it. Those are things that go on in my head. The narrative of don't cause a scene. Don't talk about it. Like don't make yourself bigger than you think you are. So,
yeah, it's like, who do you think you are? Calm down.
Calm down. That is a trigger word, but I tell myself that all the time. Like, calm down. Just chill. Relax. Be better. Just calm. Like, why are you on the stage? Come down.
And again, a lot of those show up in our relationship, our friendship. So we're just basically, again, rehashing our friendship because it's like, yep, we see that. And even with, someone like me that does understand your struggles of taking up space, we still do it to each other, right? It's so interesting. Like, yeah, it's just how it is, It is. And for me too, it's talking too much in a group setting. Like if I catch myself at the end of it sharing more than I thought I would, I instantly like get cold sweat and I retreat. And I'm like, anyway, moving on.
I've definitely seen that. If she suddenly physically moves back and gets really quiet and does the agreeing nod excessively.
Because I'm like, what have I just done? You got too ahead of yourself. I don't know what gave you that confidence to do that, but like, shut up is what I think in my brain, which is so bad.
And the funny thing is, it's like on the outside, I don't think she talked at all.
Yeah, again, that's Yana always tells me that. It's like me sharing maybe like 30 seconds feels like sharing 5 minutes. And it's because I'm so self-conscious of how much I'm putting out there and sharing, which is kind of what you were saying too, Yana. But again, in making decisions. So yeah, putting attention on others. That's like in my head, I'm like, okay, it's not about me. It's not about me. It's not about me. So that's what I do in my head. So then it kind of moves into what do we do in our unhealth, which is a lot of what, is going on
Just,
mentally.
yeah.
But I think this is where you'll really notice the difference between the nine and the twos, quote
Hmm.
unquote, like taking up space. What is that for you, Yana?
Yeah. So kind of moving from what goes on internally and how it's shown externally. For me, I literally look like a person that goes with the flow with everything because that's how I operate. I just don't, it looks like I don't care. I don't care about anything.
Yes.
I'm
Yes,
like,
yes,
okay,
yes.
yeah, I'll
Mhm.
just, yeah, I love that. I say that. Oh my God, I say that a lot. I love that. That's amazing. Oh my gosh, awesome. Let's go. I don't care. I don't know. Those are phrases I use with every question someone asks me about what I should think or want. Like, Yana, do you want sushi or lasagna? I'm like, oh, I don't care. I love both. I mean, I do. I love both, but
You do say that. Oh my gosh, see, you're already doing the the
yeah.
nine thing.
So, or I say, oh, I'm just chilling. I'm chilling about everything. And so when I do that, sometimes I am, and I could care less. But for the most part, my brain is thinking, okay, but if I say this, will they change their mind because of me? I don't want them to change their mind because of me. I don't want to maybe not let them eat lasagna because I wanted sushi, and that goes on in my head. So for the most part, it from someone who maybe care about me and want to be with me and want to see my needs met, it looks like I don't care about them because I'm always like, no, no,
Mm.
you do it. You do it. I don't care if my opinions are in the mix. And so, even though for me, I'm thinking I'm keeping the peace, for another person who does genuinely care about me, they may mistake that as, oh, they don't want to spend time with me, or they're
Mm,
indifferent to what's going on in our situation. So, that is
yeah.
kind of, I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but that is definitely something I've been becoming more aware of in just being chill and going with the flow. That is definitely
Yeah.
how it comes out in my unhealth.
I'm glad you mentioned the whole what was it? Like, oh, that person doesn't it comes across as I don't care. Cause yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I've definitely at first when I didn't know you as well felt that like,
Yeah.
oh, she doesn't care enough to add her,
Like
opinion in the
show
mix
up.
of this. Yeah, yeah, she doesn't care enough to show up. And it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean that, but again, I totally see how people can take it as like, all right, she's not too interested here. Let's move on. But it makes sense.
Yes.
Well, I was gonna say there's joy in knowing like when people do work through that and see like
Mm-hmm.
where your heart is. I feel like that's when like you're loved and you're cared for and
Mm-hmm.
you feel seen. So uh for me it's shutting down. What were you gonna say something?
No, I
Oh,
just get
okay.
nervous talking about it. I am sweating profusely right now.
Same. It's exposing our core fears in
Yes.
life and putting it out on the internet in the world. For me, it's shutting down and having self pity. Self pity is real because I suppress my needs, thinking that, oh, it doesn't matter and I'm
Mm-hmm.
doing what's good for everybody. When really, I matter too, and people would want to hear my opinions. And if I
Mm-hmm.
share or I don't share, people care about me. They want to know.
Mm-hmm.
Don't make such a big deal out of it. But then I hold resentment or bitterness because I'm like, oh, but people actually didn't ask about me, or people didn't, I don't know, ask. Yeah. And then I get really bitter and I'm like, Jess, why do you, it's like self deprecation. Like, why do you set this up for yourself
Mm-hmm.
and then are so disappointed? Why do you do that? So then I start seeking validation in others. And so any validation that I receive, I'm like taking in and running with it. And it's just showing that I look for external things
Right.
to measure my worth or make
Mm-hmm.
me feel valuable when really I am not being knowing and living out the truth of my worth in God. And that's what truly matters. But when I'm in unhealth, I start
Mm-hmm.
seeking that in other things, which is really hard for me to admit. Yeah, not fun.
You're doing awesome.
Ah,
She's doing really great. I can notice how much you are working on that. I'm sure for someone who's so different from a 9 or 2 or from us may see this as what in the mandu is going on. But Jessie, I know that just the amount of mental energy it takes for her to even say like, but I think, or but I feel like, or whenever we talk about something, it's like, oh, but in my experience, and you can tell whenever she does put herself in that position, she has thought about it for at least a solid 10 minutes before even coming to that place. And so, and after she's done, she's like, oh, time to go take a nap because I did too much today.
Too much mental effort put into that.
Yeah, but it is. It is.
Mm,
And I
yep.
acknowledge that.
I appreciate it. I know we kind of caught each other. We know when we're both just mentally, our brains are spinning and we're thinking about it and thinking about it. So again, we
Mm,
don't take our words lightly. Like
mhm.
whenever Yena speaks, I listen because I know that she didn't just say it to say it. Like she really thought through it. And same goes for me. So I really appreciate it because there's this understanding of like, okay, we're able to believe in the best in each other and see
Right.
that. So I feel like that's really cool. But let's move on to action steps. What are we doing to kind of, push ourselves out of this cycle? Again, we're going to struggle with this for the rest of our life. Our core is going to be our core, right? But
Right.
we are able to use tools like enneagram to help us
Mhm.
live out more of the truth of who we are.
And who
So
God made us to be.
and
Yeah.
yes, exactly. What's one way, Anna, that we're doing that?
We're literally have a podcast. We're here just
Ding, ding,
simply talking
ding.
about what's going on in our brain, which sometimes even this one, when we were writing it down, I was like, we always just talk about us. We always just talk about 9s and 2s. We should include all the numbers in this episode. And then I'm thinking, but no, this is not an Enneagram episode. This is a self-reflective episode. What am I saying? I'm like sweating the whole time, sharing about what goes on internally. And so I think this has been a ginormous exercise for the both of us to put our
Yeah.
brains out in the
Mhm.
public.
And the thing is, when we're talking here, it's like any other catch up session where I don't know, we're looking at each other, we're talking, we don't
Mm-hmm.
realize the magnitude. And then when someone says, oh, I listened to your episode and I thought about that, and I'm like, oh
Oh
my
my.
gosh, I forget that people are listening to our thoughts and sharing about who we are. And that gives me instant like freak out because I'm like, and obviously we knew what we were signing up for, but every time
Yes.
we're just reminded, like, holy, what are
Our
we
words
doing?
mean something.
Yeah. And that's hard for us to even put that out there, right? So this has definitely been a good challenge for us.
A ginormous challenge. A lot.
Yes.
Huge.
Yes. Huge, very major. But then what does that action step look like for you in your life at the moment?
I think just kind of how I talked about it earlier, my indifference or my go with the flow nature is not always great. Of course, in some situations, it's good because it looks like I'm in tune with the environment, I'm in tune with people's feelings and blah, 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 which I am. But also because I don't show up my whole being, like I said before, people can take that as not be offended, but more, oh, I guess they don't want to meet me halfway in getting to know me and
Mm,
and allowing them to get to know me. And so really being okay and sitting in the uncomfortability of saying, oh, this is how I feel, this is how I think, this is what I want to do. And also being okay with disagreeing or calling someone out and I think true peace, I'm redefining peace from Yena Kim's
mm,
definition to what
huge.
God's desire for peace is in my life. A lot of a lot of anxiety the past couple weeks. I will be very honest with you all.
Yeah. And even again in our last episode, like explained how our trip was good but hard. This is what we're talking about is we practice stepping into that. And it's hard. It
It
requires a
is.
lot of mental energy and kudos. But yeah, it's hard for
Yes.
sure. And for me, it's my small action step that I can take is with every question that I do ask, because I feel like I ask a lot of questions and I take the
Very
initiative most of the
intentional
time.
questions. Yeah.
Right. And after that, I need to try to be bold and to share my answers to that question, which I
Mm,
don't like doing because I asked the question for a reason, not so that I can share, but because I want you to share and for me to
yes.
just listen. So breaking out of that and like inserting myself, which I hate, but knowing that I can do that and it's okay and they want to hear just
Mm,
because they didn't ask that back doesn't mean they don't want to hear that.
mm-hmm.
And that's why I mostly don't share because I'm like, well, I asked it, but they don't want to hear my opinion. So being bold and being okay with sharing and knowing that they do care is something that I have to remind myself to do. The end.
He's doing awesome.
The
I
end.
love it. Of course, as a friend, I need to also challenge that, say, hey, I want to hear it. So we're practicing it on each other.
Exactly. Exactly. Preparing ourselves for every other friendship that we enter
And
into.
exactly. Just, well,
Um,
guys,
yeah.
that was a palm sweating episode. I don't know why I even showered. That's what I'm
Oh my
thinking. I'm like,
gosh.
I just showered in my sweat at this point.
And I was gonna say, like, even though Yena and I are nines and twos and we take up space and we don't like taking up space, and maybe you relate to that, maybe you don't relate to that. But I wonder what are some of the action steps that you could take if you're on the side of not wanting to take up space. How can
Mm,
you challenge yourself in that way? And then if you're someone who doesn't really think about that, what are ways that you could be that friend to
to draw
help
them
that
out.
other person and
Mm,
bring them out?
I
You
love
know,
that.
want to challenge you guys. Like, let's all, it's not just see, oh my gosh, it's the inclusivity thing, but it's not just Yena and I, processing this. Like, let's process this together.
Mm-hmm.
And I challenge you guys, yeah, to think about those things.
Ooh, again, back with the great questions over here.
Gotcha, gotcha.
Yes, again, thank you so much for listening to all of this and just our thoughts and what's on our hearts and how we're growing. I hope that you guys are growing with us. Cringe, sorry. Anyways, we are on Spotify, on our YouTube, and I try my best to update on Instagram, but please follow us there. We just so appreciate all of your support and your feedback. Again, we will see you next time on our next episode. And until then,
Bye.
bye.